Welcome back to our Walk on Water study. We are in week 3 and our theme is storms. And this lesson arrives in God's perfect timing because there are storms all over the country right now. Ice storms, snowstorms, windstorms, just terrible weather. And so I hope that these lessons this week help you to endure your storms, physical storms, spiritual storms, emotional storms, whatever kind of storms you encounter. So let's open our books to week 3, day 1, and our anchor verse from our Walk on story is from Matthew 14:23b through 24. And whenever there's an A or a B, just so you know, that means it's the first or the second half of that verse. So it's not the whole verse. And it starts at, later that night, he, Jesus, was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. And so when I got to this part of the story, I stopped and I thought, why would God send them into a storm? Weren't these his beloved disciples? Didn't they just feed 5,000 people? Can't they use a break, Jesus? Why on earth would Jesus knowingly send them out, knowing a storm was coming? So that's what we're going to talk about this week. The storms of life. Sometimes God sends them. We don't like that part, but God sends the storms, but always with a plan and with a purpose. And often it is to grow our faith, because we don't grow on the mountaintops when things are going well because we don't need the Lord. But in the valleys, when we're on our knees, those are growth opportunities. Those are opportunities to trust in the Lord. That's what trials are in disguise. Opportunities to trust. And so that's what we're going to talk about this week. And so Jesus, day 1, he sends them into the storm, and we all have encountered storms. So this first day will help us think and pray about what kind of storms that we have faced and are currently facing that help grow our faith. And I bet we can all look back and say, wow, that was a really difficult time, but God used it to grow our faith. Day 2, we have another story of the disciples in a boat. And this time it comes from Mark 4:37 and 38. And Jesus was sleeping. And they're saying, teacher, don't you care if we drown? And so how many times have we cried out to the Lord and said, where are you, Lord? Where are you? Are you sleeping? Did you miss this? And the disciples felt the same way. And so sometimes when trials and storms arrive in our life and God is silent, we wonder, is he even there? Is he sleeping? Does he know what's going on? How do we handle those situations? And we're going to learn from how the disciples handle it not too well. And often we see in scripture, these are broken people. They're normal, flawed people. And so we can learn from their mistakes and missteps. So day 3 is one of my favorites because it's the story of Jonah. And we're all familiar with the story of the whale. But we may not know or even remember the part where God sent the storm. God sent Jonah on a mission to Nineveh. He didn't want to go, so he went the opposite way to Tarshish and got on a boat, and God sent a storm, and they ended up throwing him overboard, and that's how he ended up in the belly of a fish. But it was that storm that stopped Jonah. Sometimes God sends storms to get our attention. Maybe we're going in the wrong direction. And sometimes when we're disobedient like Jonah, it affects the people around us. And it certainly did for those people on the boat with him. But he was an incredible testimony in the end. So read day 3. It's a great one. Day 4, we have Paul. And he's pleading for the Lord to take away this thorn in the flesh, but God responds, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And isn't that the truth? Again, trials, thorns, difficulties are all opportunities to trust in the Lord. And Paul begged, whatever this is, we don't know if it's a physical ailment. We don't know exactly what Paul's thorn was, but we know that it never went away, that God did not remove it. And God said, my grace is sufficient. That you need to lean on me And if we have trials, that's what happens. That's our opportunities to trust in the Lord. If everything is going well, we often forget about God. And so suffering is actually an opportunity to grow in the Lord. And no one besides Jesus knew more suffering than Paul. So day 4 is a great day. And then day 5 is one of the most difficult parts of Scripture, I think, and it's Jesus on the cross. From noon, there was darkness, came over the land, and then we have Jesus crying out to the Lord, my God, why have you forsaken me? And this lesson is from Matthew 27:45 through 46. The suffering that Jesus endured was beyond anything we could ever imagine, and God allowed it. God allowed it, but with redemptive purposes for all of us. And so all of this suffering, all of these storms, all of these trials that we are facing or have faced have a purpose. And so I hope these lessons encourage you this week on storms and the storms that you may be going through in your life. And I hope you take time on day 6, as we always like to pause and pray about what is the next step? What did I learn this week that I can put into practice to take maybe one step closer to the Lord, one step closer to trust? Because trials are really opportunities in disguise to really trust in the Lord. And so stay safe in all of the storms swirling out there in our country this week. And I just thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful week. And next week, we are going to be moving on to seek. When the storms arrive, that Jesus seeks us. Jesus is always seeking us, and he's there for us waiting. So have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye.